Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure and a great honor to be here. Having founded and established a spa and wellness business and successfully sold it, I thought it's only fair that I'll start this morning with a wellness statistic. In recent trials, 90% of over-the-counter sleeping pills were proven to be much less effective than my presentations. So you're going to sleep very well today. So the original purpose of a company has been lost. Historically, the charter of limited liability was a gift by the citizens of a country through their governments so that corporations could provide a service to the public. They had a clear mandate by the people to serve the people. There were limits on profits, limits on the amount of indebtedness allowed, and even limits on how much land corporations could own. Over time, this gradually changed. Corporations became more independent. Their emphasis moved from public good to shareholder wealth creation. The tipping point was a landmark case for Dodge versus Ford. Henry Ford wanted to employ still more people to spread the benefits of industrialization system to the greatest extent possible. His rationale was more cars, less profit, more people would be employed, and more people could afford his cars. The Dodge brothers, big investors in Ford, wanted more dividends, not more factories. Ford emphasized that his company was an instrument of service rather than a machine for making money. Unfortunately, the court ruled for Dodge. The court wrote, "There should be no confusion of the duties which Mr. Ford conceives that he and the stockholders owe to the general public. A business corporation is organized and carried out primarily for the profit of its shareholders." So we've over time lost the original intent and perverted the objective of a corporation and what the state historically had in mind when it granted people the right to incorporate and benefit from a limit to their liabilities. So over time, greed has become good. Human behavior is guided and directed by what we measure and what we reward. We measure and reward at a corporate level profits, share price, dividends. Society tends to focus on economic output rather than prosperity, quality of life, and happiness. To quote Robert Kennedy, GDP, it measures everything except that which makes life worthwhile. So where has that left us? 4 million people die a year of lung asphyxiation. The rich world gets more unhealthy and fatter at the expense of the poorest half of the planet. In fact, last year, US airlines spent an extra $300 million of additional fuel because of the obesity of their passengers. So now we know why they've charged for the peanuts. Oxfam recently told us that the richest 85 people on the planet have more wealth than the poorest half, 3.5 billion people. Sorry, slide? Oh, sorry, wrong one. In France, it makes sense for me to refer to a French personality, Christine Lagarde, who said recently, "Make no mistake, it's the world's most vulnerable people who will suffer the most from climate convulsions." She went on to say that almost half of the world's population will live in regions of high water stress, and 40% of the land in sub-Saharan Africa will no longer be allowed, will no longer permit the growth of crops as it did in the past. So, and our industry as well is a perfect example of where we really satisfy the richest 20 to 30% of the planet. Hospitality and tourism, if you're flying even with EasyJet at the cheapest level or Ibis, you're the richest 20 to 30% of the planet. And because of our resource-hungry ways, we're actually taking resources at the expense of the poorest 70% of the planet. So in summary, we as an industry are consuming more than our fair share of resources. And companies must become the solution, not the problem. A company must have a purpose beyond just enriching shareholders. So let me share with you some of the experiences at Soneva. Our core purpose, we create innovative and enlightening slow life. Slow life standing for sustainable, local, organic wellness, learning, inspiring, fun experiences. Intelligent luxury is a guideline. What we found is over the last 40 years, as a result of Thatcherism, Reaganism, the internet revolution, the BRICS, the rich have changed demographically. Rather than being the landed gentry with their inherited wealth, living in the countryside, they're now urban, living in their boxes. So in the past, the rich had freedom of space, plenty of fresh air, plenty of fresh food, privacy, no stress, no Blackberries. Today, the opposite is the case. They're living in these boxes, the home box, then going into the car box, normally a German brand, to their office box, back into the car box, to a restaurant box, usually by a branded chef, a famous designer restaurateur, eating sort of foods that they would have in London, Paris, Shanghai, whether it's the Wagyu beef, the new style sashimis, the first gross, the famous burgundies. So those become commonplace. They're no longer a luxury. They just become expensive. For the definition of luxury is something that is rare, something you don't have every day, something that is new but true, that rings a chord in your heart when you try it. So at Soneva, we've thought about how can we actually deliver true luxury to the urban wealthy, and we found that by delivering it, we can also create opportunities to be more sustainable and more healthy. So the more luxurious option is actually very often the more sustainable option and the more healthy option. Perfect example is our guests fly 300-400 hours a year on business. They're wearing suits, shoes, dresses, high heels. When they arrive at our island, we take their shoes and put in a shoe bag. No news, no shoes. That's it. They're walking barefoot. Now, that is therapeutic because it's grounding for you. And of course, it's sustainable because they prefer having their feet in the sand than in an air-conditioned, marble-floored restaurant. That fresh salad from the garden becomes more treasured than that first growth wine or that caviar, etc. Chocolates. Chocolate's another example of something that when it's fair trade, it can be sustainable. When it's dark, it's good for your health, as you can see, for the brain, the heart, antioxidants, theobromine, and of course, it's a luxury. So really sort of turning conventional wisdom on its head. In France, a presentation wouldn't be complete without referring, of course, to French wine. And here we have a famous Bordeaux vineyard, Château Pontet-Canet, in 1985, was classified as second growth. So old vineyard, hundreds of years making wine and growing traditionally. And we have a direct correlation here between sustainable agriculture, healthier product, and a better quality. So in 2003, 2004, they moved from traditional winemaking to biodynamic winemaking. And as you can see by the scores of Robert Parker and Wine Spectator, the scores have progressed dramatically. From the mid-80s, they've suddenly jumped to the mid-90s and up to 2009, 2010, which Robert Parker scored 100 out of 100. So a perfect example of an average Bordeaux wine, making average, good quality wine, sustainable practices led to being a unique, exceptional product. Open-air cinemas, you can't do that in Paris or London. The observatory, showing our guests that there is a universe beyond Saint-Germain in Paris and sort of Chelsea and Mayfair in London. Open-air bathrooms, no air conditioning, no marble, no gold taps. That was the traditional language of luxury. If you're living in your box, that fresh air becomes treasured. The bathrooms may be worth millions of euros if they were in London, but they're sustainable as well because they're really immersing the nature, immersing our guests in there. Where else could you have a shower and see the full moon? So, in summary, we're in that middle area there where we create luxuries and we don't necessarily damage the planet. We create luxuries and sometimes enhance people's health and wellness. In addition to a sustainable value proposition, companies must find ways to cause less harm and do more good. We created, as a result, the Slow Life Foundation to reinforce our core purpose of Slow Life. And it's the result of, one thing I'd like to make very clear, it's the result of not donations. The Slow Life Foundation is a UK charity. It has raised, over time, $7.5 million. But none of that has been blind donations. All of that money has come from small tweaks to our business model, where we haven't affected our profitability negatively. We have not negatively impacted on the guest perception of our business. I would argue the opposite. I think our guests actually prefer our business and are more endeared to our business as a result of those changes. So small tweaks, no impact on our profitability, no impact on guest perception, but raising $7.5 million from a small group just by those changes. And one example is we have a mandatory carbon levy, not voluntary, mandatory. Every guest who stays with us, with Six Senses as well, which was a more commercial brand, paid a 2% carbon levy onto their room rate, mandatory. We raised $5.5 million for the Carbon Sense Fund, and we've funded projects such as 500,000 trees in Thailand, helping a local community in Chiang Mai, offsetting 250,000 tons of CO2. A 1.5 megawatt windmill in India, which gives the local community subsidized energy. And then more recently, a commitment to give 150,000 cooking stoves to families in Darfur and Myanmar. Our cooking stoves, which we subsidize, burn the wood twice as efficiently and emit 60% less CO2. So it's a gold certified project. We retire the carbon credits, and the local community have benefits. Of course, in Myanmar, they're spending 30% of their income just buying firewood, so that halves. Darfur is just a case of risking the security of a village just to get the firewood. And of course, I mentioned earlier that 4 million people are dying of lung asphyxiation. These stoves burn wood more efficiently. That risk disappears. The other thing we did is we banned branded water in our hotels. Being in France, I might not be very popular, but no Vitel, no Evian, no San Pellegrino, no branded water in our hotels. So we turned a linear process of resource extraction, shipping the water halfway around the world, and then throwing it into a rubbish dump, to a circular process, where we wash our bottles again, we use the tap water again. What we've created, in my opinion, is, apart from the obvious ecological benefits, a smarter product, a beautiful bottle which we use thousands of times, a healthier product. Rather than having our water mixed with plastic in a plastic bottle, which is traditionally considered to be a carcinogen causing cancer, we add various healing properties to the water. It's carefully crafted, and eventually the choice is a series of crystals. That's our water menu. Which crystal would you like your water mixed with? Those savings have gone to water charities, and as a result, we have raised $850,000, and 600,000 people have been given access to clean water. As a result of this, having no pushback for 6 years, not a couple of guests complained when we explained the story, no problem, they understood it, they continued to pay for the water. So with that success, we decided, can we roll this out to the whole hospitality industry? We co-founded with two ladies, the Whole World Water Foundation. Whole World Water is now global. It has about 80 members globally. We're starting to get some traction with some of the big groups, and that is the real opportunity to scale, because if the big hotel groups joined, Hilton's, Accors, Marriott, Starwoods, etc., those 10 big hotel chains, if they joined and they followed the same practice and they gave just a proportion of their savings, not all their water savings, they could still improve their profitability, but just a part, just 10% of revenues, because the savings, normally one pays about 20% of sales for the water, a bottle of Evian. Now it's costing us 2%. So if hotels just gave 10% of their revenues to water charities, it could raise up to $1 billion a year, just these 10 hotel groups. And that would go a long way towards solving Millennium Goal number 7. So it's another example of where a small tweak in the business model, which doesn't really affect our profitability or our guest perception, can have huge impact, positive impact. So companies can be a force for good. And such an approach also inspires our host and motivates them to offer a unique level of service. So you have there's a clear relationship between ecology being economical, financially beneficial, and corporate social responsibility and innovative ideas also improving the performance of your underlying business. And so what I'd like is when you go back to your offices on Monday, just think about ways of how these thoughts, these ideas that I've mentioned can help you and come up with your own business models in your own companies to think about how you can avoid and reduce waste, reduce your demand on non-renewable resources, and institute mechanisms into your business model that raises capital to support the poorer majority of the planet. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.